My name is Cindy Reynolds. I'm 29 years old. And this is the story of how my family blamed me for everything, until the day they came crawling back. It started the way it always had, with silence that didn't soothe, but screamed. I was standing in the corner of our perfectly decorated living room, watching Lily take her graduation photos in the sunlight while Mom fluffed her hair and Dad adjusted the sash over her shoulder like she was royalty. Meanwhile, I was sweeping up the petals from the bouquet she'd dropped 2 minutes earlier, and nobody said thank you. That's when it hit me, I'd always been background noise in my own family. Growing up in that 2-story house outside Columbus, Ohio, everything looked like an American dream. But what outsiders didn't see was how easily that dream turned me into the villain of every family story. If Alex missed curfew, I had distracted him. If Lily failed a test, I had pressured her by doing too well. If Dad came home in a bad mood, Mom would glance at me over dinner and say, "Try not to set him off tonight, okay?" As if I controlled everyone's emotions just by existing. I tried everything. I studied harder, did more chores, bit my tongue until it bled. I even learned to smile while swallowing disappointment. At 16, I won a national essay contest and got invited to Washington, D.C. Mom's only comment? "That's nice. But who's going to drive you?" Meanwhile, Alex got a standing ovation at his baseball banquet just for showing up. By the time I got accepted to Stanford on a full scholarship, I didn't even bother celebrating. I read the letter 3 times alone in my bedroom, then tucked it away under a pile of sweaters. When I told them, Lily barely looked up from her phone, and Dad muttered, "You gonna fly across the country and forget your family?" I didn't forget them. I just kept hoping, naively, that someday they'd see me. That if I proved myself enough, they'd finally believe I mattered. So after graduation, even though I had offers in San Francisco and New York, I came home. I got a job in digital branding in Portland, just a few towns over. It paid less, but I told myself being closer to family was worth it. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. The first family dinner I came back to, I told them about the campaign I'd launched that hit 2 million impressions in a week. My dad frowned. "So basically, you sell lies online?" Lily laughed and said, "What's your job title again?" "Email queen?" And my mom just passed the peas like I hadn't spoken. Still, I kept trying. I helped Lily write her resume. Took Dad's calls about how this internet stuff works. Showed up to every holiday dinner with a smile and a bottle of wine. I even took Mom to her doctor appointments when she threw out her back. But every time something went wrong, missed interviews, forgotten birthdays, unpaid bills, I was the one they looked at sideways. The final straw came quietly. Mom called me one night around 10 p.m. "You were supposed to take Lily to her job interview," she snapped. "She waited for you all morning." I blinked. I hadn't even been in town, I was in Eugene for a client meeting. "I never said I'd take her," I replied, stunned. "Well," Mom said with a sigh, "what's done is done." That's when I realized, it didn't matter what I did or didn't do. In their eyes, I would always be the one to blame. So I started pulling back. I stopped answering calls after 6 p.m., declined Sunday dinners. Skipped random family events without guilt. And every time I said no, I could hear the shift in Mom's tone. "You think you're better than us now," she once texted. No, I didn't think I was better. I just didn't want to be broken anymore. The irony? Just when I found peace in the distance, they came asking for help. Dad called out of the blue. "It's about the store," he said gruffly. "Brooks and Company is in trouble. We need your marketing magic." Brooks and Company was the small furniture store my grandfather started. I used to nap between leather recliners when I was 7. So despite everything, I said yes, temporarily. I offered to build them a new website, help modernize their image, and run a few digital ads. I didn't take $1. I did it all after hours and on weekends. Designed a whole online catalog. even got them trending with a Handmade in Heartland campaign. Sales jumped 12% in a month. And then came the trap. They told me they needed help refinancing a warehouse loan. "It's just a formality," Mom said sweetly. "We need a cosigner. With your credit score, we'll get better terms." Something didn't sit right. I asked to see the books. Dad got angry. "Don't you trust your own parents?" I stood my ground. "I trust numbers. Show me the numbers." They eventually did. And what I found made my stomach turn: maxed out credit cards, overdue payments, and cash withdrawals that didn't add up. I agreed to co-sign, but with strict conditions. Monthly transparency. Expense caps. Shared financial control. 2 days later, the papers came in, with my name already filled in. I signed. And I thought I was doing the right thing. But I had no idea the war that was coming. 3 months after I signed the refinancing agreement, I started noticing the red flags. At first, they were small, tiny expenses here and there with no receipts, vague responses when I asked for clarification. Then the withdrawals started increasing. One day, I opened the business bank account using the cosigner access I had legally negotiated. A $3,900 cash withdrawal had been made that morning, from an ATM near a golf club 15 miles away. I checked the history. There were more, $2,300 one week, $4,500 the next. In just under 2 months, nearly $18,000 had vanished in cash with no invoices, no explanations, nothing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at my ceiling, heart pounding, stomach in knots, knowing something was horribly wrong but hoping, still hoping, it wasn't what I feared. The next morning, I called my mother and asked to meet. We chose a small cafe in the historic part of town. She came alone, her usual perfume replaced with the smell of faint tension. I slid the bank statements across the table. She looked at them, her fingers trembling slightly, but said nothing for several seconds. Finally, she whispered, "Your father's been leaving early. Coming home late. I think something's going on." I swallowed hard. "Is it gambling?" She didn't answer. But her silence was answer enough. That night, I cried in the shower. Not for the money. Not even for the betrayal. I cried for the child version of me, who had once believed that if she worked hard enough, one day she'd be valued. 3 days later, my phone rang at 11 p.m. It was Lily. Her voice was tight, like she'd been crying. "You need to come to the house. It's serious." I hesitated, but I went. When I arrived, nearly everyone was there. My parents, Alex, Lily, Aunt Mary, even a few cousins who rarely showed up unless something dramatic was happening. The air felt heavy, tense, like the room itself knew a storm was brewing. My father stood first. "We need to talk about the store." I nodded and reached into my bag to pull out a financial progress report I had prepared. But before I could speak, Alex slammed a folder onto the table. The bank issued a foreclosure notice. "We have 30 days before they take everything." I blinked. "What? Why didn't anyone? What did you do to the store's marketing?" Mom snapped, her tone sharp, bitter. "Your ridiculous campaigns drove away our loyal customers." "What?" I said, stunned. "Sales were up 12% last month." "Yeah, with customers using buy now, pay later cards," Alex growled. "You brought in broke kids. We don't need influencers. We need real buyers." Then Aunt Mary added her jab, "This isn't Target. This is furniture. You tried to make us trendy instead of trustworthy." And that's when I saw it. This wasn't a conversation. It was a setup. "You're blaming this on me?" I asked, my voice quiet but shaking with fury. "You think a website or a few ads lost you the store? What about the gambling? What about the thousands of dollars in cash withdrawals?" You want to talk about loyalty? Who took your company into the digital age for free? Who built every page from scratch? My father stepped forward, face like stone. You co-signed the loan. That makes you responsible. I turned to my mother. Begged her with my eyes. Say something. Tell the truth. But she just stared at the floor. Silent. I stood there, heartbreaking in real time. I gave you my time, my skills, my credit, everything. And now I'm the scapegoat again? Alex rolled his eyes. You always play the martyr. I'm not playing anything, I said, clutching my bag. I'm just done. My father's final words as I reached the front door? Get out of my house. He didn't yell it. That almost would have hurt less. He said it like a decision. Like he'd been waiting for the moment. I walked out into the cold night, climbed into my car, and just sat there for a long time. My hands shook as they clutched the steering wheel. I couldn't even cry. My entire life had just reached its final chapter in that living room. And I knew, no matter how much it tore at my heart, I wasn't going back. The next morning, I filed for emergency leave from work. I didn't give a long explanation. Just said I needed time to deal with a personal crisis. But I wasn't breaking down. I was breaking free. I went straight to my boss, Lucinda, a woman who had believed in me from the moment I joined the firm. I want to transfer to Seattle, I told her. Permanently. I need a fresh start. She looked at me for a moment, quiet, then nodded. There's a senior position that just opened there. If you're sure, I'll start the paperwork. I packed that night. Only the essentials. Some clothes. My degree. The book of poems my grandmother gave me before she passed. And the letter. The letter I had written, my final words to a family that never heard me. I left it on the wooden shelf by the front door of their home. The same place Mom used to put utility bills when she didn't feel like opening them. It simply read. I'm not leaving because I hate you. I'm leaving because I can't keep proving my worth to people who never wanted to see it. Please do not contact me. I wish you peace. And with that, I drove away from the only version of life I'd ever known. Seattle greeted me not with a sunrise, but with mist, soft, constant, like the city was trying to wash something away. I parked in front of the small studio apartment I'd leased in Fremont. It wasn't fancy. A tiny kitchen, one bedroom, creaky floors. But it was mine. No shouting from the next room. No tiptoeing around someone else's moods. Just me. My own space. My own quiet. The first week, I shut everything out. I changed my number. Deleted my old social media accounts. I even scheduled a full health checkup, physical, dental, mental. It felt like I was pressing reset on my entire existence. To ground myself, I signed up for a local pottery class at the Fremont Art Center. It was something I used to love as a child before art supplies were considered a waste compared to Alex's baseball equipment. On my second evening there, while my hands trembled on the wheel, the instructor, a kind, steady woman named Deanna, placed a hand gently over mine and said, "Don't force it. Let the clay find its own shape." Something about that stuck. I wasn't just shaping clay. I was trying to let my life take a form it had never been allowed to have. A few days later, I wandered into a quiet cafe called Maple and Rye. It smelled like cinnamon and warm hope. The barista, a woman with short chestnut hair and a bird tattoo on her wrist, smiled like she knew I needed it. "First time here?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm Sophia. If you need anything, company, silence, coffee advice, I'm here. Seattle's not as cold as people say." It was the kindest thing anyone had said to me in weeks. From that day on, Sophia became a constant. She introduced me to her friends, a circle of artists, writers, and designers who didn't ask for explanations, just presence. I joined their hiking group. Spent Sundays sipping herbal tea on park benches. Nobody blamed me for being quiet. Nobody asked me to smile when I didn't want to. It was strange how healing could come not from grand gestures but from being allowed to exist. Then, one Sunday, I visited the Green Lake Animal Shelter. I didn't plan to adopt, just browse. But a gray cat with one cloudy eye followed me the whole time. She didn't meow. Didn't beg. Just sat near me like she understood. She usually keeps to herself, the staff said. Must be something about you. I named her Milo. She came home with me that evening and curled up by the heater like she'd been waiting her whole life to exhale. Weeks passed. I worked. I walked. I breathed. Milo greeted me every evening. Sophia texted me every Sunday. Deanna taught me how to smooth edges, not just on pottery, but in life. I thought I was finally untouchable. Until the messages started. Not on my new phone, but through the auto-forwarding I'd forgotten to disable from my old number. 38 missed calls. 12 voicemails. All from Oregon. The first was from my mother. Call back. Urgent. Then Lily, you're making a huge mistake by ignoring us. And finally, Rachel, one of my cousins, Dad got arrested this morning. Please. You need to talk to someone. They need you. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and searched Brooks & Company. Portland. There it was. Furniture store owner arrested for financial fraud and falsified loan agreements. They had used my name. My credit. My signature. And now the consequences were real. Just as I sat back, trying to collect myself, my new phone rang, one of the few people who had the number, Rachel. I hesitated. Then answered. Cindy, she said, breathless, I'm so glad you picked up. This number's for work only, I said calmly. Please. Dad was arrested this morning. At the store. They came in and cuffed him in front of customers. Mom almost collapsed. Where's the lawyer? We have one, but he says your testimony could change everything. If you confirm you didn't know what you were signing, that you were pressured, maybe the sentence will be lighter. I stayed silent. You know you didn't do this. But you're the only one who can help. I took a breath, forcing the tremble out of my voice. I raised concerns. I demanded transparency. I had terms in place. I know, she pleaded. But Mom's a wreck. And Lily says if you don't help, she might go to your job and say you ran off. She could spin the story. Say you were in on it. I'm just warning you. Are you threatening me? I asked. No. I'm just. I hung up. 10 minutes later, I knocked on Lucinda's door at the Seattle office. She looked up from her notes. Cindy? I need to talk. Privately. For 20 minutes, I laid it all out, the co-signing, the fraud, the warnings I gave, and the threats I'd just received. Lucinda didn't interrupt. She just listened. When I was done, she nodded once. You've always been honest with me. If anyone calls here, it'll go straight to legal. And Cindy, she added, you're still leading the next campaign. I trust you. I stepped out of her office, not shaking, but grounded. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was prepared. That night, I emailed the attorney who had reviewed the loan contract. Subject, urgent, new legal matter. I wasn't running from this. But I wasn't going to be anyone's scapegoat again either. The sun had barely climbed over Seattle's skyline when I received the next message, this time, from a number I didn't recognize but instinctively knew. I'm in Seattle for 3 days. Can I see you? Just the two of us. No pressure. No blame. It was my mother. I stared at the message for a long time, the cursor blinking in the response field like it too was waiting to exhale. She had never said no blame before. That alone told me something had shifted. Or maybe it hadn't. Maybe this was another performance, another trap. But still, I answered. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. The Nest Cafe. 1 hour. That's all. I arrived early and chose a seat with my back to the wall, a habit I'd picked up in therapy. I needed to see everything coming. I needed to feel safe. She walked in wearing a long ash-gray coat. She looked thinner, her hair streaked with silver, tied back tightly as though trying to hold herself together. Her eyes, once so sharp with criticism, looked tired. Not from age. From consequence. She sat without asking. Clutched her teacup like a lifeline. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, she began. I just want you to know. I've been thinking. A lot. I said nothing. She swallowed. When I read your letter, I was furious. But then I sat with it. 4 days. Weeks. And eventually, I started to hear what you were really saying. Silence stretched between us. I let you carry too much, she admitted. I ignored the things I didn't want to face. And I used you. I blinked. I wasn't sure if I'd ever expected those words. I certainly hadn't expected how much they would hurt, not in the way a knife does, but in the way an old scar throbs when rain's coming. I started therapy, she said quietly. Once a week. I don't always know what I'm doing, but I want to understand what I did. I need to. I studied her. This wasn't a woman trying to regain control. She looked like someone trying to rebuild from ash. I'm not ready to let you back in, I said softly. But I'm willing to allow contact. Under my terms. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. That's more than I deserve. When we stood to leave, she reached for a hug but stopped herself. I gave her a small nod. No dramatic goodbyes. No apologies sealed in tears. Just a moment. Real, quiet, and unfinished. Back at home, Milo curled against my legs as I stared out the window. I'd opened a door, but only a crack. A week later, a call came from another unknown number. This one, I did recognize. My father. Your mother tells me you're living in Seattle, he said, voice still as cold as the Oregon rain. Starting fresh. Like none of this ever happened. I don't want to talk about this, I said. Fine. But you should know, I've got a new plan. Something else in the works. And if you actually care about this family, you'll stop pretending you're above it all. I'm not pretending anything, I said calmly. But I'm not coming back. He scoffed and hung up. He hadn't changed. Not 1 inch. And that call confirmed what I needed to know, I had made the right choice. From then on, I kept limited contact with my mother, short texts, occasional emails. She didn't push, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of her tone or silences. Seattle became more than an escape. It became home. Lucinda trusted me with a leadership role on our biggest campaign yet. Sophia and I still met for Sunday coffees. Deanna kept sending me pictures of her latest ceramic sculptures with notes like, "Your hands are missed." I even started baking again, something I hadn't done since I was a teenager, long before my efforts were mocked as a waste of time. My days became filled with the little things I once never had time or peace for: reading on the balcony, walking Milo, finishing the books I started years ago. The chaos of Portland faded into memory, like a radio turned off mid-static. And then came Michael. It started with a message from Jessica, a coworker turned friend. My brother's in town. He's been through some family stuff. Kind of like you. He asked if you'd be open to talking. I met him at a small tea house in Capitol Hill. Michael looked like someone who had stopped believing in his own worth a long time ago. We talked for nearly 2 hours. His story echoed mine in ways that made me ache: a parent who constantly blamed, a sister who could do no wrong, a childhood spent trying to earn love by disappearing. He asked me the same thing I once asked myself: how did you escape? And I told him the truth. By letting go of the need to be understood by people who thrived on misunderstanding me. By building something real, with people who saw me. We stayed in touch. A week later, he texted, "Today I didn't feel like the problem." That's new. That one sentence made me realize something. Maybe the most powerful kind of revenge isn't punishment. It's healing. The message from Michael replayed in my mind for days. Today I didn't feel like the problem. That's new. It was such a small sentence. But I knew the weight it carried. I knew what it felt like to wake up and not instantly brace for blame, to speak without rehearsing every word in fear of being twisted or dismissed. That single line sparked something in me. I wanted to create space for more people like us. For those who had spent too many years trying to earn the love that should have been freely given. So I started something small. A support circle. We met in the quiet community room under the Green Lake Library once a month. I called it Roots Reclaimed. The name mattered to me. It meant going back to who we were before the shame, before the gaslighting, before we were made to feel invisible in our own homes. Reclaiming the roots that were stolen by dysfunction, but not destroyed. At our first meeting, there were only 4 of us: me, Michael, a school teacher named Claire, and a woman in her 30s named Anna who had spent 5 years being financially manipulated by her brother. We didn't do trust falls. No one passed around tissues dramatically. We just talked. And listened. Really listened. There was no judgment. No fixing. Just space to say, "I survived," and let that be enough. Over time, more people came. Some brought their stories in journals. Others sat silently the first 2 meetings and only shared their name. One man brought a drawing of a locked door and said, "This is what my childhood felt like." He didn't say much else. He didn't need to. Each story was another thread woven into something real. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like my pain was something I had to hide. I was using it. Transforming it. One chilly October afternoon, while sipping tea by the window with Milo curled beside me, I got an email that made me pause. The subject line was quiet. "Thank you." It was from my mother. The message wasn't long. No dramatics. No begging. "If you're reading this, thank you. I don't expect a reply. Therapy has shown me things I refused to see for decades. I still don't fully know how to love without hurting, but I want to learn. I understand now if I never hear from you again." I stared at the screen, heart strangely calm. She hadn't asked for forgiveness. She hadn't made excuses. That one line, "I didn't always understand how to love without hurting," hit deeper than any apology could have. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. For once, she wasn't taking up space in my life that wasn't hers to claim. I still kept my boundaries firm. Our contact remained rare, occasional texts on holidays or emails that began with "just wanted to share something I read," but she never crossed the line again. That, more than anything, earned her a sliver of my respect. I never heard from my father again. Not once. His arrest made headlines in Portland for weeks. After being convicted of financial fraud and falsifying loan documents, he was sentenced to house arrest and community restitution. But even then, from what I gathered through cousins' whispers, he never admitted fault. Never said my name without pairing it with blame. And I was okay with that. Because I no longer needed his acknowledgement to feel whole. My life in Seattle blossomed in quiet, steady ways. At work, Lucinda promoted me to lead strategist after I delivered a major rollout 2 weeks ahead of schedule. At Maple and Rye, Sophia introduced me to David, a calm, warm-hearted architect who asked before he entered my space and actually listened to the answers. He didn't try to fix me. He just made room for me to grow. It was new. Terrifying, at times. But good. Sometimes, after dinner, we sat in silence on my small balcony, watching the clouds roll over the city. I told him about Milo, about pottery class, about the first time I realized I didn't have to earn rest. And he'd smile and say, "You know, the way you speak now, you sound free." He was right. I no longer felt like I had to over-explain or apologize for simply breathing. I could laugh without waiting for someone to twist it into arrogance. I could say no without guilt curling in my stomach like a fist. I could live. And more importantly, I could help others do the same. At one Roots Reclaimed meeting, a woman named Bianca shared how her mother used to record her phone calls as a teenager, then punish her for what she said in private. She hadn't spoken about it in 10 years. When she finished, I leaned over and gently said, "You don't have to be afraid of being understood anymore." She started to cry, not because she was sad, but because she had finally been heard. That moment reminded me, the most powerful revenge isn't a confrontation. It's a life that no longer needs to be rescued. One foggy Sunday morning, I walked to Maple and Rye for my usual tea and quiet corner. Sophia was already behind the counter, grinning as I stepped in. "Your usual's already brewing," she said. "Also, David left you something. It's under your chair." I blinked. Under my chair? Sure enough, tucked beneath the wooden cushion, was a small notebook wrapped in a strip of brown string. Inside, a sketch of the Seattle skyline, my balcony view, down to the tiniest plant pots. Underneath, he had written, "Here's to the life you built from scratch. I'm lucky to be part of it." I didn't cry, but something inside me softened. The kind of soft that comes from safety, not sadness. From finally being seen without needing to scream for it. But peace, as I'd learned, doesn't erase the past. It just teaches you to live forward. And that's when the next ripple came. I received a call from the attorney who had helped with my cosigner agreement. His voice was calm, but deliberate. "Cindy, I wanted you to know your name came up again. There's an upcoming court hearing related to your father's past transactions. They've subpoenaed several financial records, including some connected to the marketing work you did." I froze. Am I being investigated? No. In fact, quite the opposite. You may be asked to testify, not to take blame, but to confirm you were misled. The words didn't sting. They didn't scare me either. But I felt the weight. Because this time, I wouldn't be walking into a room to defend myself. I'd be walking in to speak my truth. And I was ready. I spent that week gathering documents, emails, screenshots of texts. Every dollar I had spent to help that store. Every line in the contract I had insisted on. I wasn't doing it to win. I was doing it to be free, fully, finally. But before the hearing, something unexpected happened. A letter. Handwritten. Folded into thirds. No return address. No signature. I almost didn't open it. But I did. Asterisk, I know I've lost the right to ask anything of you. I just want you to know that I never expected you to carry the consequences. I don't think I even realized how much I leaned on you until it was too late. You built something incredible. And I ruined it. I don't expect forgiveness. But I hope you know I was always proud. I just didn't know how to show it without feeling smaller by comparison. Asterisk. I didn't recognize the handwriting immediately. But the words gave it away. My father. For a moment, I sat motionless. I didn't feel angry. Not relieved either. Just hollow. Maybe it was too late. Maybe that letter was the only apology he would ever manage, hidden in cowardice, buried in shame. But for once, he hadn't blamed me. I folded the letter again and placed it in a box beneath my bed. Not because I needed it, but because sometimes, closure comes in fragments. The hearing arrived. I wore a navy blazer, pressed slacks, no makeup, just truth. I sat across from a panel of attorneys, accountants, and court reporters. They asked about the store, the contract, the refinancing. I told them everything. Clear. Calm. Without anger or venom. Just truth. When it was over, one of the legal aides approached me in the hallway. "You know," he said, "we see a lot of family cases. Not many walk in with this kind of grace." I didn't respond right away. Then I said, "I didn't come to be graceful. I came to end it." And I had. I walked out of that courthouse lighter than I had ever felt in my life. No weight of expectations. No invisible target on my back. No more "Cindy, what did you do now?" I wasn't the family's scapegoat anymore. I wasn't anyone's anything. I was mine. That night, I went home, fed Milo, lit a lavender candle, and sat on the balcony with David. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. The breeze did enough. Later, I picked up my journal, the one I'd started the week I left Portland, and wrote just 4 words. I finally feel safe. The seasons changed. Leaves turned amber and gold around Green Lake. The air shifted into a crisp kind of quiet, the kind that made sweaters feel like armor and coffee taste like resolve. In that stillness, I found something I hadn't dared to hope for. Peace. Not the kind forced by silence or fear. The kind I chose. The kind I earned. Roots reclaimed grew. Our monthly circle welcomed new faces, men and women who walked into the library basement with shoulders heavy from years of carrying guilt that didn't belong to them. I watched them bloom slowly, like I had. There was Anna, who stopped apologizing for her boundaries. Michael, now working freelance, smiling more with each passing month. Claire, who brought her mother's old diary and finally read from it, whispering, "This isn't who I am." One night, as we were packing up chairs and folding blankets, a woman named Vanessa touched my arm. "I almost didn't come tonight," she admitted. "But listening to you, I realized I'm not broken. I was just made to believe I was." Her voice cracked at the end. Mine almost did, too. That moment, it was everything. It reminded me why I chose healing over revenge. Why I stopped trying to fix what refused to be mended, and instead started building something new. That's what Roots Reclaimed became, not a therapy session, not a self-help seminar, just a space where survival could breathe. A few weeks later, on a quiet Thursday afternoon, I received an email. Subject, from San Jose. It was from my mother. No dramatic subject line. No urgent or please. Just calm, simple. Asterisk, I'm still in therapy. Once a week. I live in a small apartment now. It's quiet. Sometimes too quiet. I started volunteering at a community thrift store. I thought of you last week when a girl came in asking for a suit for her first job interview. Maybe you don't need to forgive me. But I hope you know I'm trying to love better. Even if it's too late to show you properly. If you're reading this, thank you. Asterisk. There were no promises. No pressure. Just words. I didn't cry. I didn't respond. I just let the message sit. Sometimes, that's all closure has to be, an open door you no longer feel the need to walk through. My father never reached out again. The last I heard, he was still under house arrest. Still bitter. Still blaming everyone but himself. I never said his name aloud again. Not out of hate, but out of choice. He doesn't get space in my story anymore. David and I moved into a larger apartment with a second bedroom he turned into a tiny studio for me. I filled it with plants and books and photos from our hikes, every inch of it mine by intention. Milo sleeps near the window most days, curled up like she finally believes she's safe. Sometimes, David looks at me while I'm painting or writing or quietly eating toast and says, "You know, I'm really proud of you." And I don't flinch. I don't shrug. I just smile and say, "Thank you." Because I believe it now. Because I know what it took to get here. Because I no longer define myself by who left, what I lost, or how long it took me to reclaim what was mine. This is my life now. A life not built on resentment, but on resolve. Not on revenge, but on release. And sometimes, when I walk past the mirror and catch a glimpse of myself, shoulders relaxed, eyes clear, I whisper quietly to the girl I used to be. You did it. You got out. You became more. So if you're listening to this story, wondering if it's possible. It is. Not fast. Not easy. But possible. You don't need their apology to be free. You don't need their permission to begin again. You just need your truth. Your voice. Your worth. And once you hold that close, really hold it, no one can take it from you. Not ever again. What you just heard was the true emotional journey of Cindy, a woman who went from being blamed, used, and discarded by her own family, to building a life of healing, leadership, and unshakable peace. This is Revenge Echoes, where stories speak louder than revenge. If you felt something during Cindy's story, drop a comment below, share this video with someone who needs it, and don't forget to subscribe. Because every week, we bring you real stories of survival, justice, and the quiet strength of people who choose their worth.